Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Scanner Society show with Cordelia Blake. And today's special guest is Megla Bardwaj. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Good, okay. So Megla is, she runs a community of people who, sourcing from India is the name of it. So she helps people learn how to source from India and helps connect them. She runs trips on importing from China as well, and she's an importing expert. And she's based in Singapore. So Megla, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me here, Cordelia. Yes, it's early morning here.
This morning, right?
Yes.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go through her slideshow. She's going to talk to us a little bit about how to import from India. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A. So you can just jump right in if you want.
Awesome. Okay, so let me just share my screen over here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just give an overview of how you can source from India, what kinds of products you can source, and why you should source from India. I'll give some tips for sourcing effectively, and then also how you can get started. And of course, we can take any questions that you guys might have after the presentation. Okay, so just a very quick background on myself. I've been working in the sourcing industry for almost 20 years. I worked in India, Philippines, China. I lived in China for 10 years, and I'm currently based in Singapore for about 5 years. I visited hundreds of factories in China and India while I was working in over there, and I was mostly writing research reports on export manufacturing industries. And I was working for a company called Global Sources, which is a B2B sourcing platform. I worked for them for most of the time that I was in China. And last year I started my own business, and I'm organizing events and trips to India mostly, and also going to start something to China soon. And of course, I've started selling in Amazon recently. But sourcing is my focus. I mean, these are some of the reports that I've done in the past. So I've covered various categories from gifts to ceramics to home entertainment, phones. And I've spoken at a lot of conferences and podcasts. So I share a lot of information related to sourcing effectively and also how to attend trade shows. Okay, so why should you consider sourcing from India? Of course, most people just source from China, and a lot of people are actually not even aware what kinds of products are available in India, or that India actually is a huge exporter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one of the main advantages of sourcing from India is that you find there are a lot of unique products that are not found in other countries. That is one of the things that really differentiates India from China or any other country. And one of the biggest product categories is the handcrafted industry, where you have products like metalware and wooden products that are actually handcrafted. And these are very luxurious, high-end products and very high quality. You'd actually be surprised to see the quality of these products. And these are actually created by artisans that have been in this field for generations. So the skills have been transferred from generation to generation. And of course, now it's been commercialized, and it's being done at a large scale. So you have these factories that do some of the processes in-house, and then some of the processes are outsourced to these artisans that live in that specific city. So these kinds of products really help differentiate your brand on Amazon, and some of the products are very attractive and eye-catching as well, which is great for e-commerce, of course. Then there are a lot of local indigenous styles that are not found in other countries. For example, fabric. So India is very strong with fabric, specifically cotton, silk, those kinds of naturally occurring materials. And so you'll find that each state in India actually has a very specific style of fabric, whether it's the embellishment or the embroidery or the colors or the blends of the style. And there's a lot of handloom fabrics as well. And there's so much that you can do with those kinds of fabrics. I mean, they're mostly used for apparel, but home furnishings or other products as well can use these fabrics. So, and these products, of course, can command higher prices because they're a bit more high-end. So, tend to be more profitable than something that's mass-produced in a factory that's more, plastic-based or silicone-based, for example. Another thing that you'll find is, especially for handmade products, suppliers will accept low MOQs. So typically the MOQs for these kinds of products is 200 to 500 pieces. But then suppliers will even go as low as 50 pieces if you want to do a trial order. But of course, it doesn't. It becomes the freight and all becomes more expensive if you do such a small order, and the per piece cost might be higher. But it is possible to do it if you do want to do a small order. Whereas in China, they will not even talk to you if you say 200 pieces. It's like 3,000 pieces minimum. But of course, for textiles and garments and other things, the MOQs are much higher. These are mostly for products that are handmade. Another advantage is that there's a huge English-speaking community over there. And so most of the suppliers that you talk to, they will speak English, and there's less chance of miscommunication. I mean, of course, even China has been exporting products for so many years, and it has been working, but it's sometimes frustrating when you're talking to your supplier and they're not able to understand what you're saying. And especially if you're having maybe a video conference with your supplier, it's very difficult for them, because most people, they're okay with writing in English, but then communicating and talking is a bit more difficult. So you'll find that is less of an issue in India. You don't need translators when you go there. And of course, all of your contracts can be in English as well. I think that's a huge advantage. If you're sourcing from China, your contracts need to be bilingual to be admissible in a court. So if you want your contracts to be admissible in a court, they have to be in Chinese. So that's super important. But in India, the legal system and all is in English. So lawyers speak English. You can just talk to any lawyer and get your contracts made. So that's an advantage as well. I find that in general, the Indian suppliers have more respect for buyers' IP. And this is specifically true for the more professional export-focused suppliers. I mean, of course, it's not a blanket statement, and it doesn't mean your IP will never be compromised if you're sourcing from India. But in general, I feel that they have more respect for buyers' designs. And they themselves, in fact, put in a lot of effort into producing, developing their own designs, and they're very protective of their designs. In fact, if you go to a trade show, they won't allow you to take photos or videos. So they're very protective of their designs, and therefore they understand, buyers' designs, and they respect them more. Also, of course, they will do OEM, and you can do private label over there. You can put your logo on their designs, or maybe customize. All of the options that are available in China in terms of private labeling are available in India as well. Most suppliers currently don't sell directly on Amazon, and I think that's a big advantage for us going there, because in China what happens is so many suppliers they want to sell directly on Amazon, and many times they just end up competing with sellers, right, that are sourcing their own products. So I find that's not really happening in India. The suppliers still really want to focus on B2B, and because that's their core expertise, manufacturing and B2B. Another advantage, of course, is that there's no tariff on India products into the US. And as many of us have recently learned, it's just so important to diversify your sourcing. That is just so critical, whether it was the trade tariffs or the coronavirus shutdown that China had. And bigger brands have actually been doing this for quite a few years now. So a lot of the apparel manufacturers, they've been moving out the low-end production of apparel. They've been moving it out of China for quite a few years now to Bangladesh, to Vietnam, to Sri Lanka, India, those kinds of countries. So yeah, it's just super important. Even if you're a small seller, it's very important to diversify your sourcing and just have different options available. Okay, let's talk about the products that you can source. So these are the products that typically Amazon sellers would source. But of course, there are a lot more products that India exports, but I'm not going to go into those over here. So the biggest category for Amazon sellers would be home decor and gifts. And these are mostly made from naturally occurring materials like metal, wood, ceramic, jute, cotton, and glass. You won't find a lot of plastic injection or silicone molded kind of stuff there. That is done in India, but it's not very competitively priced. It's not done at a large scale like China does it. So if you do have that kind of product, it's better to source it from China. That's not India's expertise. There's a lot of kitchen and tableware products. So you'll see, cutlery, serving bowls, salad spoons, all those kinds of stuff. There's a lot of furniture, wooden furniture specifically. And of course, as an Amazon seller, maybe you don't want to do, beds or sofa sets, but there are other things like accent furniture that is smaller, maybe like side stools or center tables. And a lot of suppliers are actually now developing flat pack furniture, the IKEA style of furniture. So,
Right.
so that's pretty interesting. Furnishings, that's a huge category in India, and specifically cotton, silk-based furnishings. Yeah, cushion covers, rugs, throws, all those kinds of things. Fashion is another big category. So you have jewelry. So in terms of jewelry, there's fashion jewelry, of course, and there's also sterling silver jewelry. There's diamonds, in case anyone's interested. India is the largest exporter of diamonds and jewelry as well. And of course, apparel is huge. So there's mostly cotton apparel, both knitted and woven. And a lot of the bigger brands, retailers source apparel products from India. Accessories like scarves, belts, hats, footwear, leather footwear specifically is very huge in India, and it's a growing category. Textiles and apparel, again, mostly cotton, denim, silk, and wool. Organic cotton, this is huge, and it's growing so fast on Amazon. All types of organic cotton products, whether it's apparel or home furnishings. In fact, I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they're importing home furnishings in organic cotton from India, and they're doing really well on Amazon. I need to look into that as well. But that's a fast growing category. And there are really some very good suppliers in India for organic cotton. We actually interviewed a supplier in our group for the virtual India sourcing show that we did last week. And they are so eco-friendly. Their entire operations are also aimed at reducing their carbon footprint. So for example, their entire factory runs on solar panels, the entire factory. Great. And I was like, wow. And you'll of course get all the certifications that are needed to, track the supply chain and make sure that the cotton is really organic. So that's definitely a growing category to consider from India. Leather products, again, very high-end leather as well. There are a lot of brands from Italy and France and other countries in Europe that source leather products, and these are mostly jackets or belts, wallets, bags, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. Eco-friendly products is a huge category that's growing, and there's a lot of R&D happening in India for this category. So first of all, the government is promoting adoption of eco-friendly products. For example, in many cities in India, you'll find that McDonald's, they don't give away plastic spoons anymore. They're all made from wood or bamboo or some other sort of biodegradable material. So they're limiting the use of plastic themselves. And that's also one reason why the production of these kinds of materials is really growing. So there are things like biodegradable disposable dinnerware made from sugarcane waste, mm-hmm. which is very eco-friendly, biodegradable. Then there's also disposable dinnerware made from areca palm leaves. That's again, biodegradable. So they're moving away from plasticky kind of stuff and focusing more on eco-friendly products. There's also things like jute. Jute is a very eco-friendly and biodegradable material, and India is in fact one of the largest producers of jute. So there are bags and so many high fashion items. Even though jute is a very, as a material itself, it doesn't have a very refined look. It has a very rustic kind of look, but mm-hmm. they're changing jute and making products that are more high fashion mm-hmm. from jute. Food is another category that many people are considering from India. In fact, for spices, India produces 75% of the world's spices, and there are things like tea and coffee. The next big trend is going to be blends. And so, for example, you can have tea that's blended with some sort of herbs or some sort of superfoods to boost your immunity system or to just maybe calm yourself, So that's going to be another category. And there are other herbs like turmeric or ashwagandha that are also being promoted nowadays to boost your immunity. So here are just some products that I wanted to display. And this is, of course, just a very small selection of the products. So these are the wall art. It's laser cut wall art. And then this is over here are cremation urns. So, and this is a supplier that we recently interviewed in the group. And I thought this was very interesting because this is really a recession-proof product category. And people don't think about this, but this is a category that will always sell. And, there's birth and death. Those are the things that are just constant in life. There are other things like, pet products and other similar home products. One of the things that India does really well is combining different materials. So here you'll see there's wood and metal. But I mean, this is maybe a very simple example, but there are a lot of different examples. Let me see if I can find anything here. Okay, maybe on the next slide, I have some examples of mixed materials. So here are some of the eco-friendly products. So this rug over here is actually made from recycled PET bottles. And this is a photo I took at the trade show when we were there. So these are bottles over here. They're actually cut into chips, and then they're spun into yarn and then woven into fabric. And this fabric can be made into any type of material, any type of product, of course. Cushion covers, rugs, bags. This is a rug that is made from these recycled PET bottles. And even though we may think that rugs are so big and maybe not very effective to sell on Amazon, there are people that are actually doing quite well for rugs. And in fact, one of the attendees of our trip was specifically coming to India to source these rugs made from PET recycled. So this is a category to look into. Here are some of the jute products. So these are jute bags. This is the factory that I was referring to. So the entire factory runs on solar panels. This is for organic cotton.
That's great.
And here are just some examples of other eco-friendly products that I mentioned. So sugarcane waste, disposable dinnerware, and areca leaf disposable dinnerware. These are some of the kitchen products. So bar sets, very interesting finishes and patterns for things like cutting boards, cutlery, and some Jewish products as well. Furnishings, this is a huge category. So these mats over here are made from coir that are actually, this is a material that's made from coconut husk. And India is the only country in the world that makes this kind of product. And in fact, it's one specific city in India that makes these coir products. And there are a couple of different factories in that area, and they're huge. They're producing these at a very large scale. And the designs are just so beautiful, and they're mixing different materials. So over here, this one that you see that has welcome written, it's actually got a rubber molded frame, and then there's coir in the center. And then some of them are printed, embossed. You can even have some different shiny finishes. So it's really amazing what they do. They can even customize. If you run a store and you want to offer personalized and customized doormats to your audience, they can even do that. They'll produce the customized doormat and then ship it. So they also do drop shipping. Of course, it's more expensive to do that. And they are supplying to major retailers. In fact, they are one of the largest suppliers to IKEA in Asia. So, and they supply to all sorts of big box retailers and brands throughout the world. And now they're of course doing smaller orders as well for e-commerce and Amazon sellers. Cool. And then, so that's in the south of India. Then in the north of India, you'll find more cotton-based products. So this is a cotton bath mat, for example, from north. This is again something that's eco-friendly. It's made from recycled fabrics. It's an area rug, and they basically braid the fabric together. And this is waste fabric from factories or other kinds of places. And then carpets. So again, hand knotted carpets. That's another specialty of India. Okay, so some tips to source effectively. One of the most important things to consider is that you want to build a relationship and trust with your supplier for better terms and priority treatment in terms of production and delivery lead times. India is very relationship based, whereas in China, it's more transaction based. So like, okay, here's the money and give me that product, that's it. But in India, in most cases, they want to build a long-term relationship, and they want long-term partners. They want you to place repeat orders, and they will definitely give you priority treatment once you have that trust with them. It's always better to, if possible, visit the factory, especially if you are placing orders at scale. Of course, that's true for China as well. And then little things like wish them on festivals, ask about their families. That's pretty common. And I think to some extent that happens in China as well, but in India, it's even more important. You'll find that in India, a lot of the companies are actually family-owned businesses, and they have very interesting stories. So, ask about their history and how the company started. And in most cases, let's say, oh, our grandfather started the company because they were maybe supplying some sort of product to the Britishers at that time, when the British used to rule India.
Right.
And then gradually they've evolved and now they focus on the export market. Okay, this is, I think, true for China as well. Make no assumptions. And typically suppliers will say yes to everything. So you've got to dig a little bit deeper to really find out what's going on. Be very detailed with your specs. Don't let the suppliers, determine your specs or anything. And this is just good sourcing practice. And people who are, already sourcing from China are definitely aware of this, because the definition of quality is different from one person to another. What is high quality to me may not be high quality to you. So that's why in sourcing, of course, there's no such thing as quality. You should not even use the term quality. It's all based on specs. Get everything confirmed in writing so that there's no miscommunication. Whereas in China, they use WeChat. In India, it's WhatsApp. And you can always just use WhatsApp for quick response, but then get an email confirmation for everything later.
Okay.
It's also super important to vet your supplier to make sure that they're export focused. Now, India is a big country. There's 1.3 billion people there, and there's a lot of domestic demand. So there are a lot of suppliers that focus only on the domestic market. And so you want to absolutely avoid those suppliers because they have no idea what the regulations are for the export market, and they don't have the right export licenses. So you need to make sure that you're dealing with export focused suppliers that have experience in your market. You also want to make sure that they specialize in the product that you are sourcing, because a lot of times suppliers offer a range of categories, but they don't manufacture all of them in-house. Maybe they specialize in metal or wood products, and then they outsource glass or other materials. And usually the factories specialize in or by material. The specialization is by material and not really by product category. So for example, the coir factories, they can make any product in coir. So whether it's doormats or wall hangings or anything, they specialize in coir. There may be, cotton. So cotton, they can make anything from furnishings to apparel. Of course, some suppliers specialize in apparel and others in furnishings. But typically, wood, if they do wood products, then they can do all sorts of wooden products. Also, you want to make sure that you source from the right factory size. There are very small workshop-like factories in India, and they're also really large, fully automated, high-tech factories. So you want to make sure that if you're sourcing smaller volumes, you're going to a mid-sized factory. Everything is negotiable, and this is to some extent applicable in China as well. So you definitely should negotiate the price, especially as you're scaling your production and ordering in higher volumes. But there are other things to consider to negotiate, like payment terms. Maybe you can get, when you start off, then it's 50-50, so you pay 50% advance on order confirmation and then 50% on delivery. But maybe that can, as you place more repeat orders, you can change that to 30-70, for example. If you develop a really good relationship with the supplier, you can go ahead even without any payment at all. That works too. Delivery lead times can be negotiable. And again, if the supplier has a good relationship with you, then they will prioritize your orders during peak times, for example. Other things like packaging, functions, features, MOQs, everything is negotiable. And feel free to ask the supplier to make any changes in the product or the delivery. Okay, so real quick, how to start sourcing. So first thing that you want to do is, like, if you have a product in mind, then just Google suppliers. Google works quite well in India because it's, first of all, it's a major search engine there, unlike China where Google is blocked.
Right.
And most of the websites are in English. So when you do a Google search, then you'll find a lot of the export-focused suppliers and their websites come up in search results. So start there. Then you can also use supplier directories like Alibaba and Global Sources and IndiaMart. So Alibaba and Global Sources are the more export-focused supplier directories, and they do have suppliers from India and other countries. So what you need to do is, after you do a search on these websites, you need to filter by supplier location. And then you'll be able to see the suppliers from other countries. Alibaba Global Sources, both of them have offices in India, and they're actively recruiting suppliers from there. IndiaMart is another website, but I would just use that as a last resort if you cannot find any suppliers on the other two websites. IndiaMart is more domestic focused, so please use it with caution, because there are a lot of traders and agents that are actually importing products from China, and they're posting them on IndiaMart to supply to the domestic market. But there are manufacturers on IndiaMart, but it's a little more difficult to identify the real export-focused manufacturers there. There are also some export promotion councils in India. These are government organizations that are tasked to increase the country's exports. So there's cotton promotion, apparel promotion council, handicraft. So if you do have a specific product in mind, you can do a Google search, find the promotion council's website, reach out to them, send them an email and ask for an exporter list. Or sometimes the exporter list is also available on their websites. But of course, you'll just get very basic information about the supplier, and you'll have to do more research to really find out what the supplier specializes in, but at least you have something to start with. And then you can also identify sourcing agents and work through them. There are a lot of companies that work through sourcing agents. In our Facebook group, we have a few vetted agents. Also, the Delhi Fair that's held twice a year, every April and October. This is considered the Canton Fair of India.
Okay.
So you can also just search for their exhibitors there online, and they are all export focused. Okay, so some resources in case you're interested. There's a free ebook, indiasourcingtrip.com/ebook, and this is the group in case anyone's interested to join. So just last few slides, just want to quickly talk about this virtual India sourcing show that we had done last week. So we got about 11 suppliers. We did live webinars with them. People were able to ask questions, and these suppliers showed their products. So this is the doormat supplier you see at the back. He's got all of the doormats on display. So in case anyone's interested, they're on Facebook. These are the two URLs. They're on the India Sourcing Trip Facebook page, but these are just some easy to remember URLs. Real quick, I just want to talk about the India Sourcing Trip that I organized. So this is a learning, sourcing, and cultural guided tour specifically for e-commerce sellers. And it's organized around the Indian Handicrafts and Gifts Fair, which is also the major export fair in India. And it's an 8-day trip. And there are a couple of different aspects. So we organize a conference, a full-day conference for people where we teach them how to source from India, how to find suppliers, negotiation, a lot of detail. Then we take them to the trade show. So we have 3 days at the show, and then in the mornings and in the evenings when we're at the trade show, we do mastermind sessions and debrief sessions. We have about 10 coaches that accompany the group. There are sourcing coaches, e-commerce coaches. We also do a trip to Taj Mahal. We visit a factory, and we do some a cultural dance show where everybody gets to dress up and do their Bollywood dances.
Cool.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, that's a lot. That was great. Thank you so much. I'm glad you ran through your slides.
Yeah.
We have some questions, so I'd like to go through the ones from the group first, and then I have about 1 million, so we probably won't do all of them.
Yeah.
But Greg wants to know if there's a proven shipping and customs process in place to get products to Amazon or to his prep center. How do you suggest he access those services?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things to consider. First of all, it's very easy in China to do Amazon shipments, and in most cases, your supplier would manage that. They would quote you a DDP price, and then they would manage the entire shipment to FBA. That's not usually the case in India, so you do need to work with a separate freight forwarder to manage your logistics. So you have your supplier that's doing the order, and then a freight forwarder and maybe a customs agent, and usually the freight forwarder will manage customs as well.
Okay.
And then you need to make sure that the freight forwarder is familiar with FBA requirements, because not a lot of Amazon sellers are sourcing from India currently. So a lot of the freight forwarders have no idea how to, do Amazon FBA shipments. Specifically, if your shipment is going to different locations, and it gets very expensive. So also, if you're not based in the US, you need an IOR for your imports. So a good freight forwarder will be able to manage that. So we do have some vetted freight forwarders in the group that we recommend, and they have worked with other sellers in the group. So yeah, we can share that information.
Okay, great. So Michelle wants to know if they do single item customization, like if you want to order one bath mat, for example. You
As a
said
sample? Yeah, as a sample,
like
they might
for
do it. But
you had
otherwise,
said they would do like kind of a drop shipping type thing. I
oh
mean,
yeah, yeah. They would do dropshipping, but not all suppliers. There are a few suppliers that would do it. So this Coyer supplier that I was referring to, they offer that service.
okay.
So, and they
how
can
long
actually
does that
integrate with
take?
your Shopify. I think they said it, and then we can go back to the video and see what they said about it. But I think they said like 2 days or something to
And
ship
then
it
how
out
long
of the
does
factory.
how long does shipping take?
Yes, so shipping depends on where it has to go to. I think they said anywhere in the world within a week or within 10 days or something. We have to go back to the video to see that, but
Ish.
it wasn't
Let's
really
say
long.
2 weeks,
Yeah,
2 to 3
yeah,
weeks.
something.
Okay.
Yeah. But
That's
it is a bit
interesting.
expensive. And I think they said like $35 per piece, including shipping anywhere in the world, something like that.
That's not that expensive at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And but this is this supplier, and they can integrate with your Shopify store. You know, they have that capability, but not all suppliers do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody asked about the links you shared. We'll post those in the group later, and I'll post them in the comments as well. We had a question, are there any cultural differences to be aware of, Judy wants to know, when communicating with vendors? Like in China, you kind of mentioned this in your slideshow, they find it, they don't always disagree with you, and so they just, is it the same in India, or are there other things to be aware of?
Yeah, it's similar in India as well, and I think it's maybe a cultural thing in Asia. There's this concept of losing face, right? They don't want to appear to not know something or not be able to meet your requirements. So that's one cultural thing to be really aware of, and you want to make sure that you want to follow up and ask deeper questions. Don't ask questions that have yes or no answers.
Right.
Ask specific questions to really find out what's going on. Another thing that you want to be aware of is sometimes there are delays in delivery lead times, and that's something that people who are importing from India, they realize, and they always build like a 1-week buffer.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is a lot of these suppliers are smaller, mid-sized factories, and they are not very well organized. And so that causes delays. That's one thing. The other thing that causes delays is that a lot of these factories don't have in-house workers because they are subcontracting certain aspects of the production to artisans that are in the community. So there's not, some aspects are not under their control. It's not that they have these workers in-house, so that can cause delays as well. But just that's something else to keep in mind.
Okay. Now you said the export focused companies are more familiar with our rules and regulations. So one of the challenges with importing wood now is it has to be California Prop 65 compliant. If you go to an export focused supplier and say, are your products Prop 65 compliant, will they know what you're talking about, or do you kind of have to lay it out for them?
So if they have already exported to the US, they would know.
Okay.
So I haven't heard of California Prop 65 yet. I know that there's Lacey's Act. So that's some documentation that they need to do. But if they have, and is this for products that are imported in or sold in California, or is it throughout?
So this is the way it works.
Yeah.
California sets up rules, and then pretty much everybody has to comply in the whole country, because you're not going to just sell. You can't like not sell in California. Right. Or, so basically California did that with like organic, for example. For years, all the organic regulations came out of California until finally, like 20 years later, the US put in federal organic regulations.
Okay.
But they've done that now with wood and things like that it has to comply with, they have this list of things that have to have warnings on them. And so if you're importing to the US, most products have to be labeled according to the California requirements because they're just such a big state. Even if you're not in California, basically everybody has to comply.
Yeah. So in general, good sourcing practice is to specify what exactly you need. and you yourself as an importer need to be aware of all the labeling requirements, regulations. I don't think you can expect the supplier to know that. It's your responsibility. So it's always better. And of course, some suppliers may have experience and they may be able to do it with less guidance, but I think it's just safe sourcing practice to lay that down very specifically, regardless of where you're sourcing from.
All right, so we have a question from Denise. She wants to know, how does she educate herself on different product types? For example, if she wants to import a metal product, what would you suggest would be the best way to learn, what kind of questions to ask about manufacturing processes? Does it rust, material properties? Like, how would she get kind of a crash course in different types of products?
Come on the trip.
Come on the trip. There you go.
No, but I think there are a couple of ways. So in the ebook, and this is why I wrote the ebook, because I realized there's not a lot of information available about what products are available in India and how things work in India. So even before I did the trip, I had to write this ebook to educate people and give an overview. So there's some information in the ebook. And then it's just, you have to do your research. You have to just talk to people, talk to suppliers. And, sometimes you can just go to other, like if you go to a trade show, you don't have to go to the India trade show, but you can go to other trade shows in the US, for example. They don't, there are B2B trade shows, and just talk to suppliers over there of similar products and ask them questions about the product and try to get an understanding. A lot of Indian suppliers actually also exhibit at these overseas trade shows. So yeah, you might be able to find some Indian suppliers there. But I think it always helps to have face-to-face conversations and touch and feel the product to get a sense of the quality and
yes. The other thing you can do, and I've done this before if I'm trying to import in a new category, is I will just go to the store here and like look at a million of those. So like at one point we were importing ornaments, and so I read like all the fine print on packages that you never read. Like I read everything, and I took photographs and I zoomed in and I made sure, because I figured if a big company had all that stuff on the packaging, then I would need that too. So I kind of did like guerrilla due diligence by looking at products here and being like, well, what do they say it has in it? And so that's another way to kind of learn about a new category, is to just look at a bunch of them here. So we have a link to the Prop 65 rules in the chat. I can post that in the Facebook group and on YouTube as well. And then just a couple more questions. We're over on time. It's been so interesting talking to you. I could probably keep you here for hours, but I won't.
That's okay, I'm available.
So one of the things, so I love the organic stuff, the alternative materials, and that's something I'm personally very interested in. How do we have some confidence that the factory has good working conditions? That's one thing. You see that in China and really in any country where, of course it happens here too, but we want to make sure that if I'm importing from a factory, that the people that work there are treated well, they're paid fairly for the local economy. How do you do that?
So there are certifications that some companies have for that. And I think it's SEDEX, if I'm not mistaken, SEDEX. And there are other certifications as well that you can ask the supplier if they have those certifications. You can also do a factory audit. So you can ask a third-party company like HEMA, for example, which was Asia Inspection previously. They have operations in India. Or there are other companies like SGS. You can ask them to do a factory audit. And this will, of course, come out in the audit. It does cost a couple of $100s, but if you're sourcing in high volumes, it's totally worth it. Other than that, you can just visit the factory if you can. Again, as I mentioned, India is a huge country. There are lots of different types of factories. So there are, unfortunately, smaller workshop type factories that don't have very good working environments. At the same time, there are really, big advanced factories that do take care of their workers. And so, yeah, you just need to do a bit of research and make sure that the company you're sourcing from has all the certificates. And,
okay.
yeah. Also see what kinds of customers they are supplying to. If they're supplying to Walmart or IKEA, then of course you know that they have better working conditions that somebody
Okay.
does.
Now let me ask you this. Let's talk a little bit about like a budget. So let's say that I'm thinking of importing my first product from India. What would you say? We told people when we did our China trip that if you didn't have at least $5,000 to $8,000 to invest that on inventory, that's not including the trip.
Yeah.
So what would you say for India would be like a good, like if you can't at least spend this much, then don't, then just wait and build up your capital. What are you thinking there?
I would agree. I would say at least $5,000 for your inventory. And then of course you need your, logistics and PPC and all of that marketing budget. You have all of that. So yeah, about 8,000 to 10,000.
Okay.
That's the minimum on inventory, because I think if you're sourcing really small quantities, then it's going to be very expensive and it's just not going to work out. But the good thing about India is that apart from MOQ, a lot of suppliers also have MOV, which is minimum order value. So they'll say, okay, you can source a mix of products, different models, but it should be at least $5,000.
Right.
So I think that's an advantage. You don't have to source one type of product, for $5,000. And so that allows you to test different types of products from the same supplier. Maybe if it's a wooden supplier, then you can test, board games and gift items or other things.
Sure.
Yeah, but I would agree at least $5,000 for inventory and then other expenses.
And what kind of is mostly everything shipped by boat freight, or do people use air? How it is?
So it depends on all options are available.
Okay.
You can courier, you can air freight, you can sea freight, but of course it depends on the volume, the number of pieces, how fast you want it, those kinds of things.
Okay.
But similar to China, it works, all options are available. You have to keep in mind that you want to make sure that you want to be aware of the location of the factory and how far it is from the port. Because unlike China, where most of the production happens on the East Coast, and there are ports in almost all of the major manufacturing provinces, India has certain ports in different locations. So there's one in the West, there are a couple in the South, a couple in the East. So you just want to make sure you know where your factory is located, how far it is from a port. And the most commonly used port is Mumbai, which is in the West.
Okay. All right. Do we have any more questions? I think I hit all the ones in the Facebook group and the chat. All right. Well, we will have links to Meghla's group and her ebook and all that other good stuff in the comments and or in the description rather, and in the comments on Facebook. And if you'd like to learn more about me and our community, you can find us at scannersociety.com. We teach people how to build strong businesses over time, and we are just also a community of experienced sellers helping each other. So, sometimes the last place you want to go for help is Amazon. You need to ask other people who've been there and done that. So that's who we are. So. All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending live. Thank you, everybody, for watching the replay. Meghla, thank you so much for being my guest. It was so great to meet you. I hope to meet you in person one of these days.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was good.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.